Welcome to this Earnestly podcast. I'm your host, Earnest, coming to you on actually a chilly Sunday night here in South Florida. Recording this on the line, of course, a good friend, been a while on the pod, James Nies, also knows Big Jim. What's up, bud?
How's it going, bud? Good talking to you again. Always good.
We last spoke, I believe, in May, and that was right leading up to the first AEW event, pay-per-view. I believe it's Double or Nothing. Was that the first one?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that sounds right.
Yeah, and since then we've had quite a lot of things happen in the wrestling world since then. I mean, now obviously I brought you on talk wrestling, obviously, but other things I have on my mind, I want to get off my chest. But you know, it's funny. Like even then when I spoke to you, I wasn't watching the current product. I was telling you at the time that I was intrigued about coming back to watching the current product. And not even because of WWE, because of AEW. And now I'm back in. I've been, pretty active in the wrestling social media sphere for the last couple months now. Watching the current product, watching AEW every Wednesday, watching Raw and SmackDown. I gotta tell you, I've actually finally fallen behind on the Raw and SmackDown in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I felt like this week, for whatever reason, I really got behind. There's been a couple times where I'll miss half a show or something like that, but like this is the first week I think I've missed, besides NWA Power, I missed like everything this week and just kind of called it. Now I did catch most of SmackDown, but yeah, I think the whole wrestling world caught up with me finally.
Now here's the funny thing with me on my end. I'm caught up AEW without a problem. And I'm caught up with NXT, actually. I'm actually finally, I think for the first time now, I'm actually all in on NXT. Like, I watched NXT the last couple months sporadically, not knowing what's going on, still getting used to the roster. Obviously you know who Adam Cole is, and Keith Lee, and Matt Riddle, all the big names, of course. But I was still on, kind of like 1 foot in because I wasn't familiar with the roster. And I have to tell you, and it's really happened the last couple of weeks now. Ever since the takeover the last couple of weeks, I've really just been leaning in more to the NXT product than anything else on Raw SmackDown.
Yeah, NXT, I was somewhat concerned. I was actually, I think, probably most skeptical out of the 3 count guys about NXT moving and becoming a 2-hour show and a live show.
Yeah. Because
I was like, man, I think what made NXT really special is because you always wanted more. You only had that 1 hour, and it was always really good. But I mean, obviously, if you're sticking to Wednesday nights, you at least had to go live. You might as well have made it 2 hours. So, I think they've handled it really well. They've been fairly consistent, obviously, with that, taking away the World Series week and when they're on FS1. But like the product itself has been extremely consistent, and they're really firing on all cylinders. And I think everybody in NXT has handled the transition to a live show really, really well.
I can argue right now. I mean, obviously, the names on Raw and SmackDown, the big names, they speak for themselves. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, you name it. But can I argue that NXT's roster is probably the most consistent show of the 3? Like I feel like when I watch NXT, even when I don't know some of the names, I'm still more entertained by Raw and SmackDown. It's really insane because there's more money put into Raw and SmackDown, and yet I don't feel creative on Raw and SmackDown. And by the way, just for the record, I'm not one of those wrestling fans on Twitter that's always like harping on negativity with the WWE, like everything sucks. But for the first time, the last couple of weeks, I have to be honest with you, it's kind of stunk.
Yeah, I think Raw really missed the last couple of weeks, and obviously when you go a week when you're in the UK, that's always a tougher one too, because I think a lot of people tend to get the mindset, and I'm probably the same way, and why I didn't make Monday Night Raw this past week an appointment viewing was because I'm like, well, I've already seen what happens. It's in the UK. I don't need to see it, whatever. but I think with NXT, it's because it is, obviously a different creative team. It's, even though Vince McMahon obviously signs off on everything, that's kind of Triple H's project, and it is handled so differently. And when you look at it, and I mean, even when you look at the four big shows, you got Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT. The one that stands out visually different, so different, is NXT. Like, it is just such a different product from everything you see in the wrestling world, with the exception of the NWA Power. Mm-hmm. But it's just handled so differently that I think that in and of itself, combined with such a tremendous roster, a consistent roster, consistent booking, is what makes it feel like, arguably the WWE's strongest product right now.
Was the Raw in the UK? Because I remember SmackDown was in the UK also too last Friday. Not this Friday, not this past Friday, but Friday before that. Were those tape shows?
Yes.
Oof.
Yeah, they were actually taped. So SmackDown was taped on the East Coast afternoon on Friday. So it was live Friday at, I guess, 7 or 8 in the UK, and then I think that the Raw show was taped the next day or something like that. Mm-hmm. So because I mean, a good portion of the roster was still in the UK up until I guess this Friday morning, because Sami Zayn and Nakamura were on local radio in Philadelphia before SmackDown, and they said they just got in the night before or something like that. So they were in the UK up until Thursday, obviously just doing the house show tour. But yeah, Raw and SmackDown were both taped, but Raw was taped days in advance. So the results were out there for a few days.
How do you feel about NXT? Where are you on NXT in terms of? Because I keep hearing people talking about rumors about them possibly taking the show on the road, getting it out of Full Sail, and just making it more of a kind of similar to Raw, SmackDown, making it a rotated, basically a tour. I'm kind of torn because I kind of like the intimacy of NXT being in Full Sail and no more every week, but I do think that maybe with even I'm not even saying that they should have arenas similar to Raw and SmackDown, as big as those that they play at, but I am intrigued by the idea of NXT going on the road and playing to even little larger venues moving forward. Where do you stand on NXT and what they should do going forward?
I would think that the formula works right now. I think if you go to Royal Rumble weekend and you head towards WrestleMania, and you're consistently still probably 2,000, 3,000 viewers behind AEW in terms of live viewers, and I still don't think those numbers are as important as they used to be. Mm-hmm. But if the brand continues to get consistent numbers and there seems to be kind of a drive for it, then I think maybe you can go out and do your 5,000 to 8,000 seater arenas. But I think you have to be very careful because the market obviously extremely saturated right now. What you have at Full Sail. You also do have to watch too, because the every week going to a wrestling show, I don't know what the tickets cost for NXT or how all that works, but you don't want to burn out that audience as well, mm-hmm. to the point where they're not interested or they just stop going because the building's small enough you can't have empty seats there. So I'm in favor of at least sticking with the way it is for the next few months, because I think if you start taking that show on the road, then the perception is, they're scared of AEW, or it's a reaction to AEW.
I also think if you put this on the road too, that's also them acknowledging that NXT is no longer a developmental show anymore. It's now if not on the level of Raw, SmackDown, certainly rising to the point of being close to that. Because look, you don't put those guys on that show and make it a part of our big storyline to Survivor Series without acknowledging that these guys, at least the top guys, or at NXT, or let's just say what it is, ready for the big time. Because those guys came in, and to be honest with you, that was the only SmackDown I watched on Fox that actually meant worth a damn, in my opinion.
Sure, yeah, and you know, and I know there's been a lot of discussion online of people going, well, is NXT going to clean sweep, or is NXT going to win a match? I think there's a careful line that has to happen in terms of match results at the Survivor Series show, because you need to prove that NXT is a viable brand and that it's not just developmental and it's not just, you know, like kind of the minor league of WWE. But in the same time, you have to protect Raw and SmackDown a bit. So I think NXT is going to win a couple of matches, and they should. And you know, and not that it should be like if there's 9 matches, it shouldn't be 3, 3, and 3, because I think that would be too predictable as well. So, but I think NXT has to get a couple of wins, because you have to be able to say that, hey, you know, these guys, you know, kind of the Any Given Sunday theory, that these guys, you know, they are on the level of Raw and SmackDown, and they can compete anywhere. And, you know, if one of them enters the Royal Rumble and they get a win, and that's going to be the interesting thing in a couple of months, to see where they go with Royal Rumble. Because, like, you know, what if Velveteen Dream enters the Rumble and decides to take a shot at Bray Wyatt the Fiend at WrestleMania? Like, there's so many possibilities now with the incorporation of the third brand.
Yeah. Now, I think I annoyed you a little bit last week on Twitter, because and you've seen me doing this every week now, and quite frankly, I enjoy it. Maybe because it's an ode back to the late 90s and the Monday Night Wars. But yes, count me in. I'm obsessed with numbers. I'm obsessed with the ratings numbers on not only just on Raw and SmackDown individually Monday and Friday, but even on the Wednesday nights between AEW and NXT. I look for it. Like, it's so bad to the point now where I'm actually on my Twitter, refreshing Twitter between 3 and 4 o'clock, and no one's coming out within the hour. It's that bad. And yet, when I tweeted that last week, you put me in my place saying, it doesn't really matter, this and that. And I get that. There's some annoyance to that, because I think we make the numbers the be-all, end-all, which it really isn't, because those numbers are only live numbers. And somebody like me, for example, I don't watch any of these shows live, even AEW. I wait till the next day to watch it on streaming, or, you know, on DVR. Well, not DVR, I don't have DVR. I watch it on streaming, like on TNT On Demand, or watch it on the network. I watch NXT on the network 2 days after, when it put up there, 24 hours after it's on USA. But why did the numbers annoy you?
I think it's just because it's one of those things that, and I've always said that, you know, I don't think they matter as much as they used to, because obviously if you know, SmackDown would only pull like 700,000 viewers, like that is a very bad sign, and I think the people at Fox are not going to take that lying down. But, you know, it's I think people just have been told forever, when you have like the series on the WWE Network about, you know, it's 83 weeks, and Eric Bischoff's podcast, 83 weeks, and you've been told, you know, the rise and fall of WCW was when WCW, you know, told everybody that Mankind won the WWF title, that, you know, that changed the game, and Raw finally won a ratings battle. So we've been told for 20 years now that ratings are the key thing, but the entertainment landscape has changed dramatically. I mean, like you said, you don't have DVR, so you're watching on streaming services. A lot of people no longer have traditional cable or satellite. You know, I do, but a lot of times I'm watching, you know, even if I'm watching Raw live, it is, if I don't start right at 8 o'clock, I'll usually wait till about between 9:30 and 10 and fire it up on my DVR. And I usually catch up right near the end, because I'll fast forward commercials if a match is boring, whatever. The only show that I've consistently watched live, surprisingly enough, if you listen to 3 Count, is AEW, because I have found it to be, I've just been very intrigued by a different brand in the wrestling game. Now I watch NXT, I watch them all, but people forget that, watching clips that WWE posts on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube, those are also ratings, and those are also monetarily driven on top of streaming and stuff like that. So it's just something that I think too many people don't understand exactly what they're saying when they talk about ratings. And I'm not saying you are one of them. I think you, even though fascinated by the numbers, you get it. A lot of people don't get it.
Well, yeah, for me, it's actually more content for me to talk about. Like, I like to dive into the whys and the hows and what affected this. Like, it is fascinating, especially the last couple of weeks. Okay, AEW numbers dropped, NXT numbers dropped also because of X, because of the World Series, because it started NHL, started the NBA season. What factors outside of the business may have impacted that? I mean, for example, Game 7 of the World Series. I mean, we're talking about the World Series being the lowest rated ever, and yet Game 7 drew 20 million people. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, like, okay, understandable. And then the numbers kind of spiked again last week for both companies. 800,000 for each one. And then we all thought, okay, well, NXT is also catching up. They're only within 10,000 or 20,000 viewers. By next week, they should be able to overtake AEW. And I actually assumed that this past week, the NXT will get its first win. And no, AEW actually gained more numbers, came close to 1 million this week, and NXT lost numbers again. It was really weird. So it is fascinating just to watch the ebb and flow of week to week. Now, obviously, at some point, I'm going to stop following it like in that fashion. And but I think because it's so fresh right now, the wrestling business in general is just fascinating right now, that I think it's one of those things that we do get hyped about because I spoke about this before in the past about with Game of Thrones and other TV shows. Game of Thrones is like the last real show that you have to see that you can watch live. Wrestling is kind of also in that same vein to some degree, although you really don't have to watch it live. But it is one of those things where like there is some value to watching it live, to some degree. Especially on Twitter, because people do tweet this stuff, live tweet the show, live tweet SmackDown, Raw, you name it. So there is some value in that, being one of the only entities that still somewhat value the live product. I think that's why, because we know on demand is a thing now. On demand is the where we are in 2019. I think that's the reason why I think we still put some value into the live shows.
Yeah, and I mean for me, I kind of give it the comparison to like my favorite sports team. Like if I'm not home to watch, the Capitals and Flyers, I'm not gonna DVR it and start watching it, at the beginning of the game. I'm gonna just jump in whatever point I get home and see that it's 2-0 halfway through the second period. Like if I'm watching wrestling through DVR, a lot of times, I'm not going to sit through every minute of every match. But if I watch it live, obviously I'm more engaged to that live product. The only thing that has ever really in the last couple of years engaged me to the point where if I miss it, even if I see what's happened, I'll go back and watch the whole thing in full. Is to NXT takeovers, because they're just that good. They deliver consistently that well all the time that, even if I know what's coming, I still watch every single match, every single minute.
Yeah, I haven't watched any takeovers as yet. You better damn sure believe I'll be watching it this coming weekend. You know what I'm saying? Oh, absolutely. Especially the card they put up now. The card, I saw the card. I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch it. I finished. I actually. This is how much I'm bought at NXT now. It actually crossed into my football watching today. Like I started NXT around 11:45, 12 o'clock, and I didn't finish watching until like 1:30, 1:45, which means I missed about 40 minutes of football. Which, by the way, the local game was the Cowboys game too, for the record. Your Cowboys are on the local regional game today, just for the record. But so I missed part of the Cowboys-Lions game. So I look at the card. The card's phenomenal. Which I'm looking forward to watching Takeover next week. Now here's the thing I want to ask you, because I'm sure you can relate to some degree. How do you navigate the amount of hours of of wrestling that's out there a week. Because, okay, and with you, I imagine it's worse now because you're saying that you watch NWA Power. I don't watch Power just yet. I would like to watch Power at some point, but I'm probably not going to be able to do that. Because we have, obviously, just the mainstream shows alone. We have 9 hours alone, okay? 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of AEW, 2 hours of NXT, 2 hours of SmackDown. Not including an hour of NWA Power, not including an hour of AEW Dark on Tuesdays on YouTube, okay? And then not including the random pay-per-view that comes out on WWE. And then when AEW does their quarterlies. So how do you, James, navigate the amount of wrestling? Because as I told you, I said on social media the last couple of days, I told you this in private, I just said it a while ago on this podcast. It officially caught up with me. I am behind on wrestling now. I thought I was able to stay ahead of the curve, or at least within a certain amount of days. No, I've missed the last 2 SmackDowns, last Raw, and the only things I've caught up on is AEW and NXT. How do you navigate, man?
Oh, dude, it's tough. And I mean, you didn't even touch on 2 hours of Impact. You didn't touch on MLW. You didn't touch on. Now, those sort of things. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's kind of like clip based. Like if I heard about a cool spot, heard about a cool match, I'll check in on them. I'm aware of it. So for me, like Raw, I always watch Raw. Not always live. Sometimes I catch it a little late if the Cowboys are on Monday Night Football. That'll kind of just be zip through it. I'll always catch the Wednesday night stuff. Friday night, if I'm home, I'll watch SmackDown when it's airing live. Otherwise, I'll catch up on it either late at night or over the weekend. And then, like with Power, it works out really well because I do huddle up from 9:30 till about 10:30, and then while I'm kind of closing up notes and getting the audio posted, getting the video posted, everything like that, I'll throw Power on it. It usually airs for about 45 to 50 minutes. So I have it on and I can keep my eye on it while I'm doing podcast work. So and here's the thing, like if I miss a show, I just, if I don't get it to it the next day, it's usually in the past and I'm just reading about what happened because I have just a general life. I work. I have there's other shows that my wife and I watch, so it's just impossible to, if you start to get behind, you can almost get overwhelmed trying to catch up. I mean, listening to podcasts or radio shows can be the same way, and sometimes you just got to go, you know what? I'm just going to delete this episode, and they're going to highlight big points next week anyway.
They call it cutting your losses.
Right. Yeah, you almost have to, because otherwise you'll be watching something from 3 weeks ago if you're trying to catch up on every minute.
Well, it's funny. I'm glad I asked that because, okay, so here's where I'm at now. I missed the last Raw. I missed the last 2 SmackDowns. So if you're in my shoes, Big Jim, okay, you're in my shoes, you just say, fuck it and move forward? Or do you say, well, maybe watch SmackDown, maybe watch it?
No, for me, dude, I just say forget the last 2 episodes because especially going into this week, you're going into the big pay-per-view weekend, probably the 4th biggest of the year if you're talking the WWE calendar year. So guess what? When Monday night on Raw, you got your go home Monday night show. Friday night is your go home SmackDown show, etc. They're gonna tell you the things you needed to know from last week. Or, sometimes, and I've done this too if I miss a week, is This Week in WWE on the network.
That's true.
Or Now It's Backstage on Tuesday night. There's a lot of places that are going to catch you up on the biggest news of the week.
Yes, that's a good point. It's funny. I'm complaining about the whole thing, and yet I'm caught by AEW. I don't let AEW get behind at all. Like, I'll catch up, even if I'm like 2 days behind, I'll watch at some point within 48 hours of it airing. So obviously AEW is probably number 1 for me. Not saying I love it more WWE or less or whatever. It just is the show I prioritize the most, because actually it is the easiest to follow, because They're the one company that doesn't have oversaturation. You have the 2-hour show on Wednesday, AEW Dark on Tuesday, and by the way, I love the business model. I'm glad they're not doing pay-per-views every month. I'm glad they're doing quarterlies. It's smart. It puts the value in the show. Puts more value on Dynamite.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing with it too is, because they don't have a network, like a network like the WWE network,
right.
Your pay-per-view is $50 versus the network $10. So you can, if you only have 4 or 5 a year, I think it makes it easier for your viewer to get together with a group of friends. Everybody chips in $10, and you get the pay-per-view because if you're watching it by yourself or just with one buddy, $25 or $50 a month would be unsustainable for them as well. But I think they did around 100,000 pay-per-view buys or something like that.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Absolutely, that's pretty good. People are going to go, well, there's 1 million subscribers to the network, but it's like you can't compare the two because again, you're going to get those watch parties. You're going to get people that are going to catch illegal streams online. That's inevitable. But 100,000 pay-per-view buys for your first one after a month of TV, that's solid, and I think they are doing it right.
Yeah, I said you put the value back into the TV shows. It gets more. It actually makes AEW Dark even more a priority now because if you want a little more content, well, there's another hour of AEW content you can swallow up. You know what I mean? So I love it. I love what they're doing. So AEW for me is part number one, and then NXT for me is more intrigued because I love their roster. I love what they're doing. I find them more exciting of the 3 brands on WWE. Not saying I don't like Raw and SmackDown. I do like it. Those guys do enjoy, obviously. But NXT, it just, for me, feels fresh.
Yeah, and it is, and I think too, and I've talked about this not only on 3 Count, but with the 3 Count guys off air is NXT. It has, and not to coin a phrase or be intentionally funny, but it has a raw feel to it. And I don't mean a Monday Night Raw feel to it. I mean a kind of original WWF Raw feel.
93, 1993, yeah, in Manhattan.
Yeah, it's in small buildings. It's dark. The only thing that's lit up is the ring. The ring is important. And one of the things I've always noticed with NXT, and they do this at takeovers as well, is Monday on Raw and pay-per-views and SmackDowns, during the match, the crowd is lit up, the screen's still lit up. In NXT, the screen goes dark. Maybe they put up an NXT logo. The crowd is blacked out. The only focus that you can have in an NXT show is the ring, is the match. There's so much focus on that product, and that to me is just so different from, even from what AEW is doing. AEW, they have a valuable product and a product that is different in ways from the WWE, and then their stuff feels important and special, but it still has, I think, a little bit more entertainment value than NXT. I think if you're talking about the big 4 shows, NXT is probably the one that is the most different. It's more of a wrestling show than any of the other ones AEW close behind.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there. If you back to AEW real quick, if you obviously you enjoy it like I do, what would you change? Is there anything that you, I won't say negative, but anything you would change for AEW, or do you see any improvement?
I think the biggest thing for me, and maybe it's just because I'm used to kind of the WWE model, is not every match has to be a 10 to 20 minute match that gets both guys big spots in and this and that. And I get that you are trying to present it as more of a wrestling show, but I think there is also value in, and there has been a couple, but there is some value in a 3-minute match where one guy looks dominant. There is some value in the occasional squash match to really put somebody over strong. And that sometimes I feel like the AEW matches go along just because they can, and that's what they're quote unquote known for. But otherwise, I think they're doing a pretty good job considering they're 4 weeks or 5 weeks into weekly TV.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing I will say, and this might necessarily be an AEW problem necessarily, but I think the women's division needs work, obviously. Now, granted, I think a lot of the issue with the women's division is actually more so not enough available people out there. Like, the WWE obviously has that locked up. Like, season 1 about WWE, Raw, SmackDown, and whatnot. In terms of talent, I mean, we can argue about whether NXT is better than Raw and SmackDowns, but WWE has the best women in the world in their company. And AEW would probably benefit from a defection of 3, probably, for them to improve that roster on that side. I'm not saying they're not good, but a lot of, like, for example, they're pushing Britt Baker, obviously. Britt Baker has a look, which is great, but she still feels green. She still feels green in the ring. Like, to me, Rio is much better than her in the ring than she is. But the women's division as a whole isn't, to me, as strong yet. But I do, and somebody made a good point to me on Twitter yesterday that maybe AEW needs to focus on developing the ones they have now in the meantime until they get others, whether it be, defections or to sign new talent off the streets,
Yeah, and I mean, I know there's been a lot of rumors about Tessa Blanchard as of late. I think she's still contracted with Impact for at least another 9 or 10 months, but obviously that's going to be a big one to watch because AEW could definitely use her, to boost that division more than the WWE. But I mean, the dream match scenarios in WWE especially with Charlotte Flair. I mean, Tessa Blanchard and Charlotte Flair. I mean, the story writes itself.
Yeah,
but yeah, and there are some great talents. Like Allie Cherry Bomb is there, kind of waiting in the wings. So yeah, it's something that I'm really curious to see how it develops because it is definitely, I would say, the weakest point of AEW's overall product so far.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even, like you said, it's not necessarily a disrespectful thing. It's just the way that the brand has been presented and that portion of the brand has been presented, and it just has seemed a little slow to take off. Especially, I forget the match that was on Dynamite a couple of weeks ago, and it just wasn't connecting at all. And then on the other side, you're watching Io Shirai, and I forget who she was facing, and it was like, man, this isn't even close.
You mean NXT, you mean?
Yeah.
Was it Mia Yim, I think was it? Maybe? No, was it?
Yes, it was
that was a good match. That was Mia Yim. That bump she took, oh my God, with the ladder, oh my gosh.
Oh, and I was like, man, like these two divisions are nowhere close.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily want to always do that. I try not to be WWE did this, or because I think each brand should kind of be absorbed. And I always use this argument, main roster versus NXT, because on TakeOver weekends, everybody after TakeOver was like, oh, there's no way WWE can follow that. I'm like, yeah, but they're two different shows. NXT is a wrestling show with storylines, and then the main roster has always been an entertainment show with wrestling. So I'm like, you have to kind of separate the products, and I think you're going to find more value in all of them if you don't automatically do the comparison. And that's what I've really, really tried to do, over the first month or so here. AEW TV has started.
You obviously get accused of being a WWE mark, don't you?
Oh, all the time.
I hear it in the shows once in a while too. I definitely hear it in the shows. So. Oh
yeah, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I mean, even going back to the Monday Night Wars, I was always a WWF guy growing up, and There's people who grew up more on WWF. There's people that grew up more on WCW. So those were the brands that you would always kind of fall back on. And, you know, I was fortunate enough that my brand won the initial war and, you know, has been around and the only game in the show. So yeah, maybe I do, you know, kind of come to the defense of it because I think, and I have said this on 3 Count, that I think sometimes the cool thing to do is to bash WWE.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Sometimes they deserve bash. I'm not saying that they're without fault by any means, but there are sometimes. I mean, I saw people, you know, losing their mind with the new Universal title switching from red to blue.
Oh yeah, I saw that on Twitter.
They expected it to be some custom belt that some belt maker made for Bray Wyatt or just made just because. And I'm going, so you expected something, and because what the WWE logically did not fit your high expectations, that somehow the WWE is the worst thing out there. I'm like, they literally just took the red belt, which was created for Monday Night Raw, the red brand, and they made it the blue belt because it's on the blue brand. Like, that's the logical thing to do. And you know, and there's numerous examples out there, and that it's just, I will tend to come to the defense of them, maybe sometimes to a fault.
I know. It's great. It's funny thing, like, you talk about the, you know, how, like, your brand won. It's funny. You know what my brand was, actually, back in those days? Was Hulkamania.
What's that?
Because wherever Hogan went, I went as follows. Because I was a WWF guy originally, because that's where it all started for me in 1987. That's where it started for me in 1987, WrestleMania 3, all that. And I stayed there. I never went to WCW. Even when Sting and Ric Flair was, you know, doing their thing in the South, I didn't care. I mean, I didn't care. I watched a little bit, but it was nowhere close to the attention I gave WWF. When Hogan left in 93, like, I literally did watch WWF for a little while, but once Hogan and Savage was left, 94, and leading up to 95 to 96 and to the NWO, I was a WCW guy for a little while. Like, I still watched WWF to some degree, but WCW got all my attention for a little while. It didn't, honestly, it took Austin with the title in 98 to, kind of bring me back.
You know, and that's funny you say that because, and obviously, honestly, as we're talking right now, I'm watching, the February 22nd, 99, episode of Nitro, Bret Hart and Booker T.
Oh boy!
Because I just kind of put out there. I asked a buddy of mine who's as big of a Bret Hart mark as I am. Mm-hmm. You know, what did he think on Bret in WCW? And he told me this one on Nitro. So that's why I just threw that episode on. But I probably engaged more into WCW, or at least at first when Bret Hart went over, because Bret Hart was, to me, what Hulk Hogan is to you. So, you know, and unfortunately, Bret's career in WCW just never, never materialized the way I thought it could have. But yeah, I mean, you talk about switching what show you watch because of your favorite superstar. I mean, I always loved the WWF, but I did always kind of have the last channel button was hit a little bit more because I was waiting to see when Bret was going to be on.
Yeah. And the reason why I stopped watching WCW, or I started to watch it less, was because what eventually came to be 3 years later, they became oversaturated. I got bored with the NWO angle. When it went to Hollywood Wolfpack, I hated that. So it was more so that not suppose that WWF was doing much better product, which actually was the case, but WCW was turning to shit. Like, it was starting to become uninteresting. Like, right. Again, Wolfpack and Hollywood, no, keep that shit. I'm good. You know, so it went from like 50-50, or it went from like 70-30 WWF to 50-50 for a while, and then it went from that to 80-20 WWF to WCW.
Right.
It basically is what we know. Well, we now know is that WCW lost because they ate themselves alive. The business model was trash. They had bookers that were trash. Because from a roster point of view, even in 98, 99, I will still tell you, between star power and actual talent, WCW was actually as, if not better than WF. Definitely more depth, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. WCW really did have a tremendous roster, and I'm not just talking about the big names that made the jump. I mean, they really had a solid core that they had built, and they had gotten cruiserweights and things like that. Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, it was horrible creative. It was, people that, and then obviously once you had the AOL Time Warner, bought over Turner, it just, you ended up getting into a situation where the people that, once kind of helped build the product with money and financial backing said, you know what, we just don't want to do this anymore. We don't get it. And that's like where it really, really, really went away. And, when you start to have problems, I mean, it's kind of like sports when you have a couple of injuries and then things just keep compiling on each other, a couple of losses, more injuries, losses, but, it just, you can't get out from under that.
Right. So they say they beat themselves more than anything else, bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
So, all right, change gears real quick. Your Dallas Cowboys, 6-4. I love, what's funny? Like, Cowboy fans are kind of insane, but I think you're my favorite one to watch on social media now week to week because, like, your moods swing from, like, one to the next. Yet, I will say one thing is consistent, that you hate Jason Garrett.
Oh, he's awful. I just, and it's this year it looks like it's going to out the same way that it has for so many is, you start the year off really well, and then you hit this point where the team just looks absolutely lost, and then, you have 1 week where you blow out the Eagles, you get a big division win, and they're dominating in the division, which, I mean, it always feels good, but, now the Cowboys are a game up in first place, and it just feels like another one of those years where you're going to go 8-8 or 9-7, you're going to win the division, and who knows, maybe you get against a Minnesota team that you should have beaten before, and you end up winning one game in the playoffs, you fall short to a team in the second round, and Jerry and company look around and go, you know what, I think next year might be the right year for Jason Garrett and this squad. And it's just like, no, it's not going to work. It's the same predictable stuff all the time. The guy's like a career 500 coach, and if you can't get over that hump in a decade, I just don't think you're ever going to get to that mark. You've already gone start to finish basically on one great quarterback's career and receiver and running. You've gone through the running back carousel. You basically went through an entire generation of a team where you went from young and developing to a team that, I thought, because I think it was, 2007, 2008, or 2011, something like that. You went 13-3, and I thought, man, this team's unstoppable.
07.
Yeah,
the reason I know that because that's the year we went. My boys, the Giants fan, of course. We won the Super Bowl. We beat y'all in the second round of the playoffs. That was the Jessica Simpson, Tony Romo thing.
Oh God, yeah, the Cabo weekend or whatever.
I was convinced.
There was another.
I was convinced that the Cowboys and Pats were going to be in the Super Bowl. I was convinced. Because that Dallas Cowboys team was really good.
Yeah. They were incredible. And then a couple years later, they went 12-4 again, and they didn't get out of the first round. And now you're looking, if you look at the Cowboys roster now, they're banged up on defense. Who isn't? They're banged up on the offensive line. Who isn't? But, they have a really, really good offense. And they have a defense that, when they're not on the field for 48 minutes a game, is serviceable to pretty good. And a lot of them are young. You have veterans in the right spots, and they're mediocre again. And what is the consistent theme in all of this? And it goes back to coaching and whether or not the team can be prepared. And my biggest fear is that you already went through Romo's career, and he never got the win that he deserved. Jason Witten, he's back on the team now.
Mm-hmm.
He's back on the team now, and you hope that they could get a Super Bowl. I don't see it happening before Witten retires. But now, how many years are you going to give Jason Garrett a chance? Is Dak Prescott going to go through his career and never win because Jerry just keeps believing that he can? And because it's a shame.
What's
it
five
really
more?
Is.
What's 5 more years?
Exactly. And you know what? It wouldn't shock me if 5 years from now I'm sitting here and I'm still watching Jason Garrett clap on the sideline.
Oh Lord, it's gonna be annoying. First off, I have no love for you Cowboys. That's for the record. You know this already. But I will say this, and you've seen this through the years. I am probably one of the biggest Tony Romo fans that's not a Dallas Cowboy fan either. Like, I think Romo is the most undervalued quarterback of the last quarter century. I'm not even joking when I say that. Look at those numbers.
No, I agree.
Look at those quarter numbers. You give Tony Romo this team he has this year, or Romo that team that had a couple years ago when 13-3 and lost to the Packers in the second round of playoffs. They're in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Period.
I agree.
And that's not an indictment on Dak Prescott either. What that is more so the fact that Tony Romo, to me, was an elite quarterback, for a good 3, 4, 5 years.
Oh, absolutely. And there was so many times in Romo's era where, he did lead the team back sometimes multiple times in the fourth quarter, and then their defense is what failed them. And the one that really sticks out to me is it was the last game at Texas Stadium. They were playing the Ravens, and there was two drives in a row. The Cowboys were losing. In the fourth quarter, Romo leads them down. They score a touchdown. The very first play of the next drive, Ray Rice ran a 78-yard first play touchdown. So Romo has to get the team, put them on his back again, lead them down, touchdown. And then the very first play of the next Ravens drive, and it was an 82-yard touchdown, very first play for Ray Rice. And then when the Cowboys offense tries to go down and score for a third time in the fourth quarter, they run out of time, or Romo threw a pick or something. And people in the media are like, see, Romo can't win the big one. And I'm like, how do you get that out of what just happened? Like, how many fourth quarter game-winning drives do you want him to lead in one game?
Yeah, look, I got into fights with people defending Romo in the past, and if you're like, well, aren't you a Giants fan? I go, yeah, I'm a Giants fan. I'm also a guy who knows common sense, and the fact that I see, my team plays them twice a year, you would think I would probably know a little more than most, because I used to fear Tony Romo for a little while. There was a point between 2007 and 2012 where I actually feared playing him because he gave the Giants fits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and he just and here's the thing too, and I think some people have started to come around with him being in the commentary booth, because I think they realize just how much he knows about the game of football and how good. Because if you go back, when you hear him, the way he calls the game, and you can go back and watch him at the line, and you can watch the way that he played the quarterback position, and you can see that in the way he plays. And I think people can get a little bit of appreciation, better appreciation for what he was. It's a shame that, that he was riddled with terrible defenses, bad coaching, and sometimes bad teams. There was a couple of years in there where the Cowboys just weren't any good. And it's like, man, I really feel for that guy. And let's take when Witten retired the other year. I'm like, man, I just feel so bad because Witten's probably my favorite Cowboy in my whole life. And I'm just like, man, I really feel bad that guy is never going to win a Super Bowl. Same with Romo. And now, obviously, with Witten, he came back this year, and it's, I'm like, man, this team has the talent to do it, especially in an NFC where it is wide open. It is wide open for the. I mean, San Francisco almost lost to Arizona today. I mean, there's not a favorite in the NFC. There really is. I mean, San Francisco probably the best. Green Bay maybe a little bit close behind. Seattle maybe up there. But all of that's debatable because 2 weeks ago Seattle had to go to overtime to beat Tampa Bay. It is completely wide open, and if the Cowboys could just find some degree of consistency, they're right there in the conversation. They have the talent to do it.
I'll tell you what, though. Say what you want, whether you like it or not. Dak's getting paid. Dak is getting paid in this year. I don't know if he's getting paid $40 million, but he's getting damn close to that.
Well, and here's the thing. Obviously, I live here in Eastern Pennsylvania, so I have to deal with a lot of Eagles fans. And and I was thinking about this today as I'm watching the fourth quarter in the last couple drives. And I'm watching Carson Wentz either overthrow or underthrow his receivers. Now, I'm not saying Carson Wentz isn't good, but I have to laugh at the fact that Eagles fans have told me for the last 8-9 months that Dak Prescott's crazy if he thinks he's worth $30 million a year. And I'm like, so you actually think, and you can look at game film, and you can look, and now Dak Prescott has maybe missed, less than a handful of games in his career due to injury, and he was a third-round pick. Carson Wentz, he was a first-round pick for the Eagles. He's missed how many games from injury? And you can look at those two quarterbacks, especially over the course of this season, you can tell me that Carson Wentz is worth more than Dak Prescott should be. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Dak Prescott is better than Carson Wentz. I don't care what any Eagles fan wants to dream up and tell themselves, but they are out of their mind.
Well, I'll say this much. On this topic. Like, I'm a big Wentz guy, but this year, if you want to make that statement, I'm not going to argue that because Wentz has not been that good this year, to be totally honest with you.
Mm-mm. No, and I mean his receivers again have failed him a bit, but there was numerous times in today's game when it mattered most that he didn't even give his receivers the chance to make a catch. Now, we've seen Nelson Aguilar when he has the chance, he can't do it anyway. But there was many opportunities where Wentz either overthrew or underthrew. And Dak Prescott, if you look over the course of his career, that guy is clutch when it matters most. Fourth quarter, late games, critical situations. Yeah, you're going to throw picks every now and again. You're going to fumble every now and again. But more times than not, in those late game situations, if Dak Prescott has the ball, I feel pretty good about it.
He's been good this year. There's no denying that at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's been good this year. He was good today against Detroit. So, like I said with that. Last thing, I'll let you go, bud. Last thing. College football, real quick. Tua Tagavailoa, season-ending injury, dislocated hip. So sad. Not a Bama guy, of course, but still, you don't want to see guys like that hurt. Guys, potential. Yeah, you want to see that. Obviously, the conversation around that is about, well, why didn't Nick Saban have him in the game still, with the game being 35-7 in the second quarter? I'm like, well, first off, it's not surprising in the game because normally, if the game is that bad, the coaches typically wait until the third quarter to make the change anyway. So I don't have a problem with Nick Saban with what he did here necessarily, to be honest with you. Where do you stand on the whole thing?
No, I don't have an issue with him still in the game at that point. And here's the thing. That play could have happened on the first play of the game. It wasn't like it was something that was necessarily out of the ordinary. It was two guys hit him and landed on him. It could have happened any play of any game. It could have happened against LSU last week. It just so happened that it was in the second quarter of a game they're up 30. So no, I don't think Saban did anything wrong. And I think if you would ask Tua even today, like, rather have not been in the game, he probably would have said no because it was only the second quarter. So I don't have a problem with it. Obviously, it's such a horrible thing. And immediately when I saw the video, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but the first place my mind went to was Bo Jackson.
Of course,
I'm like, man, if that guy's screaming in pain like that's real bad. Like it's good to hear that they're at least positive now. He gets surgery tomorrow on Monday, and that they seem pretty positive that he should have a full recovery or a good recovery. But man, it's just a scary thing, and it's a harsh reminder of just how quick things can change, because obviously, he's going to be the number one pick and this and that. And now you don't know. You don't know what it means for Alabama. You don't know what it means for him. Obviously, the number one thing is that he lives a full and healthy life, whether it's in football or not. I mean, that's the number one key. But from from a football standpoint for Alabama, and I was talking about this with Dave, my co-host for Huddle Up, is, you know, I think, especially because of that injury, and as unfortunate as it is, that Alabama, if I'm a committee member, Alabama needs help now. They probably needed help before. I think they definitely need help now. And if the AP poll is any indication, Georgia jumped Alabama this week. So
no doubt about that. There's not question. I think Bama's done. Like, I think they're done, because you can't evaluate Bama the same way, because you evaluate Bama without Tua now, not with Tua. It has to be part of your.
Going to need a lot of help, and I don't think they can get it.
Yeah. If I'm Tua, you come back to school next year? I mean, I don't go to the draft. Come back for your senior year. That would do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a similar situation to, you know, what is the timetable for recovery? If he's not going to be able to make the combine or anything like that, I don't see how you can enter the draft. You know, is he going to have to start the year on the sidelines next year? You know, I don't know what the recovery time is and just how bad it is. But I think that the better odds, and probably the smarter odds, is that he's back at Alabama next year.
I agree. Anyway, how'd you go? Anything want to plug?
Yeah. You can follow me directly on Twitter at Big Jim Sports. Tuesday night Huddle Up podcast on our Facebook page there. 9:30 Eastern time we are live, and then 3 Count Thursday. You can get all of our stuff over at 3countthursday.com. Right now we're in the running for this Wrestling Podcast Awards. There's 3 categories.
Yes, I saw that.
Voting's open until November 25th. So all the links on all of our social media. But we are live Thursday night on the 3 Count Thursday Facebook page at 9:30 Eastern time.
By the way, your intro for that show, 3 Count, I love it. I love the intro. I was actually on the way to work on Friday, and I was listening to the podcast on the way to work, and I think I replayed the intro like 4 times. Yeah, the Paul Heyman. Yeah, Paul Heyman. Then he go to Austin, The Rock, then Austin, and then Jericho. But the way it's spliced together is so great. I think this is like my 3rd or 4th different intro I've done for the show, and this one's definitely my favorite. I change them about every, I don't know, somewhere between like 8 months and a year, and this one I've had for quite a while, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. No, I love it. You took probably my favorite Austin promo of all time. Number 1.
Yeah.
In Arkansas.
Yeah, so
in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We're going to disrespect. We're going to disrespect. And then, of course, the Rock making fun of a Billy Gunn. My name's Billy. He doesn't. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of those hidden clips that you forget about until you hear it again.
Yeah, because one of many. He has The Rock has probably a laundry list of moments. You know what I mean? But
my gosh, yeah.
By the way, it's funny. People love The Rock when he turned face in '99 and all that. I actually liked The Rock right in '98 when remember they screwed Austin in the Survivor Series '98,
mm-hmm.
and that was that little run when The Rock was going right before, between '98 into '99 when he was feud with Mankind and then back to Austin again. That 6 months right there, to me, when The Rock was still developing his character, even granted he was a champion at the time, but he was developing his character. He was still a heel, but he was getting a lot of face reactions. That era is the best.
Yeah,
that's the best Rock by far, right there.
Yeah. Oh, that was really good. And honestly, I liked, and I'm in the minority here, but I liked when he first started kind of doing the acting thing.
Oh, the Hollywood Rock.
He came back
Hollywood Rock. Yes.
The Hollywood Rock. Loved Hollywood.
That's 03. And I was telling somebody the other day, I was telling my buddy Mike, who came on the podcast the week before SmackDown debuted on Fox. I was telling him, what would be cool is if when he comes out, he should come out to the Hollywood Rock anthem. It's cooking. That one. That's the best one.
Mm-hmm.
I love that anthem. It's so great. It was so out of left field too. It was too short though. That's probably why we can't appreciate it. It was too short. So.
Absolutely.
Anyway, James, we'll talk soon again in a couple of weeks, hopefully, about more wrestling, because this shit ain't going away, man, and there's so much going on in the wrestling world and in sports in general.
Absolutely, man. It's always been a pleasure, and definitely work on returning the favor on one of the shows here coming up.
Definitely,
we appreciate it.
No problem. You take it easy, buddy. Okay.
All right, thanks a
All
lot,
right.
bud.
Have a good night, man.